Okay, I think we are live. We are ready to begin our next class on the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. We are in chapter 9, Siman Tes, chapter 9, which deals with the halahs of tzitzis, right? In the morning, we spoke about waking up in the morning. We spoke about things to do before we daven, or not to do before we daven, the morning blessing, the morning brachas. And then before we move on in our day, or before we move on to actually daven, we have to discuss the laws of tzitzis. So we're going to kind of go through it, maybe skip a little bit of it, and then we'll discuss it from contemporary Svarim as well, and maybe we'll discuss and have some questions to see some of the questions that we have in this regard. Okay, so we're starting Halacha Aleph of chapter 9. Gedoyla mitzvah staka. Gedoyla mitzvah tzitzis. Thank you. Thank you. And you're the one that's a l'chaim, right? The mitzvah stuck is also gedoyla. It's also big. But the tzitzis is also a very big, important mitzvah, because the verse, the pasuk, the Torah compares it to all other mitzvahs, and all other mitzvahs are dependent on the mitzvah of tzitzis. Like it says in the pasuk, and we say this in our Shema, go to Isa Moisai, you will see it. You will see the strings of the tzitzis, or we'll see the garment of the tzitzis, depending on how you learn that. And you'll remember all of the mitzvahs of Hashem. How is so? How is that so? How by seeing the tzitzis do we remember all the mitzvahs? Do you remember that? It's in the what?
It's in the time.
It's in the way. It's so the word tzitzis is a big amount of taparesh. The word tzitzis has the numerical value of 600, right? Tzadik yod tav. Then there are 8 strings and 5 knots, so that makes 13. That's 613. And therefore, we have to be very important and very careful that we all have a taldas katan that we wear all day long. Which means the Torah, there's no mitzvah to wear tzitzis per se, right? What does the Torah say? If you have a garment that has 4 corners, you have to put a tzitzis. What if you're not wearing a garment with 4 corners? You don't have to wear tzitzis, right? There's no mitzvah midah. There's no biblical mitzvah to put on a garment of 4 corners and that has tzitzis on it. It's a mitzvah. If you have a garment of 4 corners, you can't wear it without tzitzis. There's no mitzvah to wear tzitzis. However, because the Torah says how important this mitzvah is, that all the other mitzvahs are dependent on this, you want to remember the mitzvah. So therefore, it's important to come and tell us, go out and sew for yourself or buy for yourself a garment that has 4 corners and put on tzitzis. So now you're doing the mitzvah. This mitzvah, by the way, does not apply to women, which means women, even if they are wearing a 4-cornered garment, do not have to put on tzitzis. The reason for this is because this falls into the category of a positive mitzvah, a mitzvah saseh shazman b'rama, a positive commandment that is time-bound. Why is it time-bound? Because when is there no obligation to wear tzitzis? At night, only during the day. So it's limited to a specific time, daytime. Therefore, women are not mukhayib, they're not obligated in the mitzvah of tzitzis. Okay, so what is tzitzis made out of? It should be made out of wool. How's it translation?
White lamb's wool.
Lamb's wool. Okay. And it should be gedoyla kishir. Has to have a minimum size, right? If I wear a very small garment, it's not considered a 4-corner garment. That's chayav tzitzis. So what is the minimum? Has to be what it says over here is 3/4 of an amma by a half an amma. It's one opinion. The other opinion is an amma by an amma. We said an amma is roughly 18 inches. No, I'm sorry. Yeah, an amma we say is roughly 18 inches. So we follow really the second. So the first opinion said it could be a little smaller, but the second opinion, which is what the Alter Rebbe follows, is that it should be an amma by an amma. So 18 inches by 18 inches. So it means from side to side. We have David just giving us a beautiful pair of scissors. This is size 6. Show me what the size is. So from here, from side to side, the width wise should be 18 inches, and like we have from the top where you put your head in, from here to here, should also be. So it should be a square, an amma, square amma. Thank you. Should be a square amma, obviously on each side. Right. That's what the Alter Rebbe says. I mean, there are some opinions that says that the entire garment could be 18 inches from side to side.
This one says a little different here.
No, so the Kitzur says two opinions. The Kitzur says that either should be 3/4 of an amma by an amma, or an amma by an amma. Sorry, 3/4 of an amma by a half amma. It's a very small shear, or it should be an amma by an amma. But the Alter Rebbe says
for a child and then an adult.
Before we get to the child, this is for an adult. For an adult, we say that the idea is that this garment is supposed to cover most of your body.
Mm-hmm.
So an average body, we say 18 inches by 18 inches, and amma by an amma covers the body, right? So the Alter Rebbe says it should be on either side. So the front has to be that shear, and the back has to be that shear as well. Now, it mentions. So what about children? So obviously, you can take a child, a 3-year-old child, which that is when we start having children. We are tzitzis from the age of 3. That's when their formal Jewish education begins. That's when we leave their payas. Obviously, is when we cut their hair, and that is when they start wearing a yarmulke, if they're able to, full time, and we put the tzitzis on right from the age 3. So obviously you can't put an amma by an amma tzitzis on a child, and even an older child. Oftentimes it's too large of them. So therefore, it says that below, under the age of 6, any size. I mean, it's really just for them to get used to. So any size is no issue. From the age of 6, you should try getting them either an amma by an amma, or at least it should be based on their size of their body. It should be something that kind of covers on either side. It covers most of their body. So that is the size of the tzitzis. Those people, you get talis, a talis katan. This is referred to as a talis katan, which means a small talis, right? Call it tzitzis, but the talis that we wear during davening is called a talis gadol, the big talis. So this is the talis katan. This is actually not a Chabad version, by the way, but that's fine because it has an extra split here. But that's okay. What?
I had ordered to be so, but
That's fine. So anyway, so what happens is you go buy today. What happens is, right? So you have this garment, and sometimes you say, what if I want to sew it, keep it closed on the side, right? I should have it open on both sides. I could sew it on both sides, right? Today they call it the undershirt tzitzis, right? You ever saw those? That you could buy where it's basically an undershirt, and just on the bottom it's split. It has the 4 corners, and it has tzitzis. So what does it say about that? So for those who make the talis katan tfura that's sewed, it's attached on the side, you have to make sure that the opening should be roiv hanira leinayim. This is what the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says. That it has to be not just 50. First of all, it has to be 50, at least 51% of the length of the garment should be open. So it's not enough that you have a little corner, but a little split. So you have 2 corners on each side, but it has to be at least 51%. But the truth is, it's even more than that. Roiv hanira leinayim has to be a very evident, a very clear majority of the length. So 60% or 65%, that's very clear. Yeah, you see, without measuring even, you see right away it's the majority of the side is open. That's what the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch says. The Alter Rebbe actually is more mach. The Alter Rebbe says those are not good. We don't rely. It has to be completely open. In order for us, in order to be counted as a split, as a corner, the whole garment has to be open. So therefore, he does not recommend. If someone wants to follow the Alter Rebbe, we do not recommend the undershirt tzitzis unless you could buy the undershirt material tzitzis that's fully split open, right? So it's more comfortable, especially in the heat, but it's not sewed at all on the sides. What? Well, this cotton, that is the undershirt material, which is a little more comfortable than cotton.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So wait, are you saying it's a problem not to be sewn on the side?
No, on the contrary.
Oh no, I mean,
Do you understand what? You know what I'm talking about with undershirt tzitzis? Have you ever seen that? Where basically it's a regular clothes undershirt.
I thought you were bringing up another issue of it.
No, I'm explaining what it means. What it says here, it's sewed up on the side. What does the sign mean? The sign means take this. I can even do with this. If I took this and I sewed this, right, and I kept it open, how much of it has to be open? So the Kids Shulchan Aruch said it has to be at least about 55%, 60%. The Alter Rebbe says that you shouldn't even sew it all together. That's all I'm saying. Okay. And that okay, so he continues that we also, in addition to the talis katan that we wear all day long, we should also have what's called a talis gadol, or we call it just a talis, right? What we wear during davening, and we should try to have a nice one, a nice garment, and a nice tzitzis. And in general, all our mitzvahs we always have to do behidur with the best way possible. Like it says in the pasuk, "Zeh keli va'anveyo," this is my God, and I will beautify it. And we should always try to beautify him before Hashem with doing beautiful mitzvahs. And therefore, we also have to be careful to buy the tzitzis from a trustworthy person that we know that it was done properly. And when a big component of being done properly is that you're doing it l'shem mitzvahs tzitzis, having in mind that this is done for the mitzvahs. I mean, today you buy tzitzis, who's doing it for any other reason besides the tzitzis? But I guess if you just took any strings, like back in time, we went to the marketplace, you just bought strings, you attached it. So you want to make sure it's done by someone who's doing it specifically for the mitzvah of tzitzis, and also has to be the right length. So as an aside, with tzitzis, I'm not sure. Until you buy in Jamaica stores, it has a hechsher, it's fine. But sometimes, and I know this for sure, with tefillin straps, like who would have thought? Tefillin straps also has to be done lishma, and it has to be done properly with the right material and stuff. And I heard that a number of years ago, they realized that there was a store or this company that was selling Ritzuis that was coming from, was it Russia or was it from China? I mean, somewhere I don't know where in Europe, that they were buying just from whatever, and they were making it the straps, and it wasn't a Jewish production, it wasn't doing it for the mitzvah, and it obviously got a lot cheaper, and you're able to tell because you're able to easily like split it in half, you're able to peel it apart. But the point is that sometimes you buy something and it's from I went to Israel and I bought it, right? You really have to be careful where you buy it from, and you have to make sure it is a proper hechsher, giving it its proper kosher certification. Okay, talking about what type of garment to wear, right? The material of the garment itself. So today there are generally two types of garments. You have the garment made out of wool, like you have over here. And you have the garments that are made out of cotton. The cotton garments are obviously a lot more comfortable.
Little cheaper too.
And a little cheaper. So Obviously, obviously, I don't think the kids are really talks about it, but basically, the Alter Rebbe has a pretty stringent opinion over here in regards to the cotton tzitzis. So obviously, lachatchila is supposed to have wool tzitzis. If you don't have wool, you can use cotton tzitzis. But what's the problem? The problem is that the actual strings that we use are made out of cotton. The actual tzitzis, these strings, what are they made out of?
Wool.
I meant to say wool. I said cotton. Yeah, they're made out of wool. These are made out of wool. And most opinions say that
You can't have shotness.
in truth, I don't have the Alter Rebbe in front of me right now, but what I remember is that basically it gets really complicated putting these tzitzis on a cotton beged. So basically, according to the Alter Rebbe, it's a real b'diavad. It's a real like last resort to wear cotton. It's not to say that's not totally not kosher, but it's not something that it seems to be a big doichak, a big b'diavad to wear cotton tzitzis. And so therefore, we try to wear wool tzitzis even in the winter, even in the summer. In the Orleans, obviously it's hot. But that's definitely the Halacha thing to do. Obviously, many people are wearing cotton, and we're not saying it's a problem. That's something you want to put your cotton on your children, make them more comfortable. I'm not saying we should not do that, but just to keep in mind, like according to Alter Rebbe, it's not just hey, it's a nice extra chumrah to do. It's really like on the contrary, it's almost like a real b'diavad not to wear wool. Again, I don't have it inside, and I had in mind to look up that halacha again, just to clarify. I just remember learning it. I remember seeing that it wasn't like a extra chumrah to wear wool tzitzis. It was like not wearing wool tzitzis is like a real doichek. Like you're relying on like 3 different opinions, very 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 lenient opinions, in order to make that work. Okay, I'm going to skip halacha beis and gimel. Talks about how to make the holes in the beged and where to place it, but we're buying it, we're not making it ourselves, so therefore we're going to skip that. I'm going to do halacha hey. Halacha hey halacha 5 kind of clarifies exactly what are these tzitzis, right? What's going on over here? What is going on over here? You ever noticed? You ever looked at this in greater? Yeah. Okay. So how many strings do we have in every corner? 8. How many strings? If you take it apart, how many strings? 4. You ever notice that? You take 4 strings and you put it into the hole, and then you are wrapping it around all these times. Let's read it inside halacha 5. The custom is to make 5 knots in the tzitzis, which means in between the 4 knots we have chulias. How do you translate chulias?
5
That's
knots.
4 coils. 4 coils. 4 sets of coils, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
Which means you take the 4 strings and you put it into the hole, and then you make 1 knot, and then you take the longest. Every set of 4 strings has what's called a shamash, which is 1 longer one. It starts. Well, we don't do tchila, but yeah. So that longer one, it starts off longer because we use it to do the coils to wrap it around. So the first time we wrap it around we do 7 times. 7 times, and then we do another 2 knots. And then we do again 8 times. And then we do another 2 knots, and then 11 times and 2 knots, and then 13 times and 2 knots. Right? Now, the Chabad custom is that these coils that we wrap around is not just 7, 8, 11, 13, but each one goes in. We always do groups of 3. Notice that? We always do it groups of 3. So you have 7, so you do 3, 3, and 1.
Oh yeah.
And then for 8, you start with 2 because you got to fill in the last 2 the previous one and two. Then we do another two groups of three. And then for the 11, we do 3, 3, 3, and 2, which is 11. And the 13, we begin with 1. And then we do 3, 3, 3, 3, 4 groups of 3. Right? So that is the way we do it in Chabad. I believe it was something that began about 100 years ago.
These tied it in Chabad.
These are tied in Chabad. Although some in Chabad, like myself, when they tie the tzitzis, they actually make that separation. So you kind of see the differences between them. Right, and the reason for that is because we want to have the same distance between every set of coils should have the same space on the thing. So if you have 7 wraps or if you have 13 wraps, you want to make sure it's the same space. So by the 7, you have more space in between every group of 3, like you have in the picture here. You have more space over here and less space over here. But you want to have each group should be the same size, take up the same space. Yeah.
And just as it illustrated, right?
As exactly as illustrated. Well, not exactly, because I feel like this one, yeah, I guess from the knot to the knot are the same. Ideally, the entire section of the coils and the knots should be a third of the rest of the tzitzis, which is way more than a third. See, 8 centimeters, 16 centimeters. So you want to kind of spread it out a little bit. So it should be a third. So it should complain. Oh, yeah. Anyways. So let's continue over here. And because it is noy mit tzitzis, the beauty of the tzitzis is that it should all be equal. Therefore, the first set of coils, which are less, you want to separate them from each other. The second group, which is 8, do a little closer, and the third, which is 11, do a little closer, and the fourth, which is 13, do them a little closer, right? You got that rough. Every set should have the same space. So if you have 7 coils or 13 coils, you want to make sure the 7 are a little spread apart, so they have the same space. That's considered noy tzitzis, is considered the beauty of the beged. Each tzitzah, each strand of tzitzis has, meaning from the first knot until the end of the string, has to be at least 12 agudolin, which they say is about 24, about 2 centimeters is a agudol, so it's about 24 centimeters. I don't know, I guess your width of your thumb, the width of your thumb is 2 centimeters, I guess. Yeah. So the chulios, the areas of the coil should be 8 centimeters, and the strings hanging down should be 16 centimeters, right? 8 agudol, right? And if they are longer, you should make the chulios a little longer, right? So it should be like a third. And you should try to be careful that when you make the tzitzis, something if you make your own tzitzis like I do, you want to always be careful that the same 4 tzitzis remain on the same side, which means I put the 4 tzitzis into the hole, right? It's hanging on the hole, and I make a knot, right? I tie them twice, right? Now I got 8 strings. I take the longest one, wrap it around, tie it again, right? So once they're all mixed in together, we don't know which 4 are on the either side. So there are 2 ways to do it. Either just do that and mix it all in. And every time you make a knot, you take 4 and 4, you make a knot. You just choose any 4 and you make the knot, right? But the best way to do it is to always keep it separate. So even while I'm taking one of the strings, for example, and I'm wrapping it around, I don't just hold it like this. I always hold it separate. So when I'm there to make my next knot, I have the same 4 on either side. Why is this important? Because soon we'll learn what happens if one of them snaps. If one tzitzis gets ripped, or what if 2 of them rip? Sometimes it's important to know if they are the same one or they are different, right? If it's 2 on the same side, you know for sure. If you were careful to keep them separate, you know for sure it's not the same string. But if it's one from either side, it may be the same string. So there are different laws, the different halachas. If it's kosher, depending how where how long of it is sticking out, how much of it is sticking out, it's important to know whether it's the same string or not the same string. So that's why it's better to keep it separate.
So the same four on each side need to stay on the same
They
side.
don't need to. It's better. It's still kosher. It's only if it rips. If you knew that it was separate, it always kept separate, kept on each four was kept on the same side, then it's easier to make it kosher.
So the question is, if you break one, which I
Yeah.
do all the time, I have to know whether it's the same one on the same string, because if you can wrap it around your finger, it's still kosher, right?
So we'll get to that in halacha 13.
Okay.
But yeah, we'll discuss that. We'll discuss that. We're gonna skip 6. We'll go to 7. Halacha 7. Before you put on your tzitzis, you have to check them to make sure they're still kosher. The Alter Rebbe says even on Shabbos, where you're not allowed to actually tighten any knots, you're not allowed to make a knot on Shabbos. You're supposed to check them to make sure they're kosher. Because if they're not, you can't put it on. So you put on a different talus. You want to make sure that they're all the knots are tight. You want to make sure that it's not ripped where it's attached to the beged, to the garment. You want to make sure it's not ripped over there, and you want to separate them if it's knotted, if they're kind of all together. You want to separate the string because the tzitzis always has to be separated from each other. Okay, when we put on the talus, halacha 8, we first make the bracha. We hold the talus and we wrap ourselves in the talus. We make a separate bracha for the talus that we make on the small. We make lihisatef batzitzis, which means to wrap ourselves in the tzitzis. And we wrap ourselves, like it says, like the Yishmaelim used to do, which basically means that the talus is wrapped all over around your body, and also your head, covering your eyes. Not your whole face, necessarily up until your eyes and your nose. That's what we wrap ourselves when we make the bracha, and we stay wrapped like that for the amount of time it takes to walk 4 amos, which is a few seconds. So we make the bracha, wrap ourselves, half our head, and then we're there for about a few seconds, and then we can put it on as we usually hold it. But you want to make sure that you have that at least for a few seconds. It's important not to your tzitzis should not be dragging on the floor. It's not considered respectful for the mitzvah. If you should pick them up if you're able to. If they're long, maybe tuck them in if you have to. Now, what is not mentioned over here is that this is for people who are not wearing also a small beged. Our minhag is that we wear a talis katan, and for those who are married and are wearing a talis gadol, they don't make a bracha on their talis katan on their in the morning, right? So we don't make a bracha on the tzitzis that we wear and then another bracha on the talis. When we make a bracha on the talis, we have in mind that this also covers the beged katan, the small tzitzis that we wear beneath our shirt. If you don't wear a talis, then we make the bracha on our tzitzis in the morning.
Why is that not a hefsek?
What you make a bracha on the talis? Why should we have to?
But if you put your tzitzis on first.
You put this on in the morning.
Yeah.
So you don't make a bracha on your tzitzis yet.
So
It's not hefsek. The question is, why don't you make a bracha right away? Because the real mitzvah is really to wrap yourself with the talis. That's the more chashuv mitzvah. So we make the bracha on that, and then we have in mind our regular tzitzis as well. Now, in order to be obligated to make a bracha on your talis katan, your tzitzis, it has to be a beged, a garment that you have not worn the whole night. So let's go back a second, right? Like we mentioned earlier, the mitzvah of tzitzis does not apply at night. It says ureisem oisei. You should see them. So if you can't see them at night, there's no obligation. So therefore, it's only during the day. And therefore, many from Yidden, they take off their tzitzis at night when they go to sleep. They don't wear tzitzis at night. In the morning, you put it on. But the Alter Rebbe and our minhag is, and it's according to Kabbalah as well, we do wear tzitzis at night. We wear garments at night for various reasons. Either because the moment the crack of dawn already in the morning, you already want to be wearing your tzitzis. You don't want to walk without tzitzis in the morning, but you also don't want to put on tzitzis before you wash your hands in the morning. You're not supposed to touch your garments in the morning. So you want to have the first opportunity. So you wear tzitzis at night. And there's other reasons, Kabbalistic reasons as well. So therefore, we wear tzitzis at night. The problem is that you can only make a bracha on your tzitzis if you put it on in the morning. If you're wearing it already, then it's not new. It's not a new mitzvah. You're wearing it all night long. So therefore, for those who don't wear a talis and they're making a bracha on their tzitzis that they're wearing, they should change tzitzis every morning. So you should have at least two pairs of tzitzis. And every morning, put on a new one. You wear it for 24 hours. The next morning, put on a new one. Like this, you're always wearing a new one, so you're able to make a bracha on it. If you wear a talis, so you're making the bracha on the talis, and then you can wear the same one. Not a problem. If you're making the bracha on your tzitzis, you should change the tzitzis every morning. Okay. Halacha 10, Halacha Yud. So someone's wearing a talis, and they take off the talis. They have to go to the bathroom. They have to go somewhere, and they take it off. However, they had a mind to soon put it back on. So therefore, it says that even if you went to a bathroom, a place where you're not allowed to wear a talis, you can't make a bracha for sure. When you come back and you put it back on, you do not have to make a new bracha because you had a mind to put it on again. However, when you took it off, you did not have a mind to put it back on. You had a mind, I'm done. I'm taking it off for the day or for the next few hours. And then after you took off your talis, you decided, hey, I actually want to put it back on for whatever reason. So then you have to make a new bracha. If your talis fell off of you and you do not have a mind, you're davening with such kavanah and suddenly your talis kind of slipped off. So do you have to so when you put it back on, do you have to make a new bracha? So it says if part of the beged, if part of the talis is still on you, it kind of slipped off, but part of it is still on you, then even if most of it fell off, you do not have to make a new bracha. However, if basically all of it fell off, then you do have to make a new bracha.
You wrap yourself again, or
if you make a new bracha, you have to wrap yourself again. So, like the example, a common occurrence would be if someone's doing hagba, right? So you're wearing a talis, you're doing hagba, and as you're doing hagba, it falls off, right? So sometimes you're noticing it. So if you're noticing it, so then you're already having in mind that it's falling off, I'm going to put it back on. So as you took it off, you had in mind that you're putting it back on. So then you don't have to make another bracha. But often you don't even realize they fell off. And you didn't, it falls it off. So then you have to make a new bracha. You didn't remove it to kavanah to put it back on. Oh, I see now in Halacha 12, as we mentioned a little bit about what the material we should use for the thing. So the part is like this, that some say that wool strings only work if it's also wool garment. If you do wool on cotton, it's not kosher. That's the main issue with using cotton. Okay. Not necessarily shanas. It's the halacha that wool strings of tzitzis has to be used on a wool garment. So now we're getting to the halacha of what happens if something rips, something tears. Okay. So before we read it inside, I just want to kind of go through the different scenarios and go through each one what happens. Okay. So you have your tzitzis over here. Okay. You have the knot where it's attached to the garments. We have 5 knots, the coils, and we have the 8 strings. Okay, so if any of the strings are ripped anywhere above the last knot, so sometimes it gets caught in something. There's a string over here, where it's, right where it's attached to the garment is torn, or somehow something gets torn all along this section, puzzle. It's non-kosher. Oftentimes it could be like right over here, something right by the fifth knot. It's so strong, it's so short that it doesn't even get, it's not able to get out of the knot. So it's above the knot. It's non-kosher. What do you do about it? If you have another beged, you wear another beged. If you don't have another beged, then if there's no other choice, you could undo some of the coils. The coils are only a minute. So instead of 13, do 10, do 5. So then, I mean, if it makes that difference, I mean, if it's that short and just taking off, you still need the 5. You still need the 5 knots, but the amount of time that's wrapped around, that's already a minute. So the 7, 8, 11, 13, that could be moved around again if there's no other choice. If you're stuck, there's no other talus, and it got stuck in the bench, and now there's, if I just took off a few coils, it's already going to come out through the knot. Obviously on Shabbos you can't fix it, but during the week, then you could do that. But that's the first thing. So if it's torn above the knot, when above I mean closer to the garment, then it is possible. Right. Now, what happens if it's torn outside? Okay. So if it's only one string is torn, makes no difference how short it is. It could be even less than a bow. It could be all the way to the knot. If it's only one string, it's still kosher. One string is still kosher. Now, what happens if it is 2 strings? So 2 strings, it really depends on, like we mentioned earlier, is it on two on the same side, 2 on 2 different sides? Were you careful to make a difference between them, right? So if you had tzitzis and you were careful to make sure that they're always separated on 2 different sides, and therefore when you have 2 on the same side, you know for sure that they're not the same string, right? So then again, even if it's very low, 2 are kosher because it's not the same string. However, if they are on 2 different sides, and once they're on 2 different sides, you don't know, they might be the same string, or you don't know for sure that they were careful with separating it. And when you buy regular tzitzis from the store, I don't think they're always so careful with it, right? So we are going with the assumption that even 2 on the same side, they are possibly the same string. So here is where it gets a little complicated. Over here, one of them, it's okay to be very low, but the second one has to have enough to make a loop. How much is a loop? How much is that? I don't know. A little bit. I don't know. What is that? Does it say glue? I think it's 4 centimeters. 2 a glue, maybe? I don't know. We'll see. We'll see it inside. You have to make a loop. So again, right? If it's 2, then one of them can be very low. One of them has to have the second one has to have at least a little bit, enough to make a loop.
Now,
Okay.
what if you had 3 of them that had little short pieces out of it? But 3 strings.
Before we get to 3, we'll get to 3. Now, just to clarify, so if it's on 2 different sides, then you always have to have at least one that has enough for a loop. If it's on the same side, and we're assuming that they were not careful to make sure they're separate, then again, the same thing applies. One can be very low, the second one has to have enough for a loop. What happens if it's 3?
But
So
they're
it's
long.
3.
They're not real short. They broke off. They broke just a little, 3 or 4 inches off the end.
Right. So the third one, if the third is ripped, the third one has to have at least 12 gudulim. How much is a gudul? Well, no, not a gudul.
What's the difference?
Where's the ruler? How much is the regular thing to this? The third one, if there's three, then the third one has to be a little longer.
Mhm. Because in my line of work, what I'm doing, it happens quite often, actually. So that's why I kind of go by the standard that if they short, we'll have to wrap around your finger. And if I have two of them that's shorter than that, I don't use them.
Yeah, so you're right. The thing. So it has to be 24 centimeters, but I think
I'm measuring 15 inches, it looks like.
no centimeters. Here? This is centimeters.
Really?
This is centimeters. No, this is inches.
Those are marked. Hey, Google. How many centimeters are in this? Yeah, Google.
Just do how many inches? How many centimeters are 14 inches?
You read 14?
Yeah.
Okay. So what did you say? 2.54 times 14. 35.56 centimeters.
There you go. Okay, so it has to be. I want to read it inside. I think it means between both sides of it. It has to have 24 centimeters. Between the two sides of it, it has to have 24 centimeters. But let's see this inside. Let's read Halacha 13. Okay. Halacha 13. Tzitzo shenifsak mimeno chut me'arba'asa chutin. A tzitzis that was torn, that was ripped from the four strings, and it has within it kidei aniva, the amount that it takes to make a loop, which means, what's a kidei aniva? Arba'a agudolim, which is 8 centimeters. But I think the Alter Rebbe says you could do even less than that. So the Alter Rebbe, I think, does 4 with 2 agudol, which is 4 centimeters. So either it has kidei aniva, or 2 of them were torn, and each one has the same amount, and 2 of them, but the other 2 were still complete. It's kosher. However, if 3 strings were torn, even if all 3 have that shear, and the 4th is complete, it's written very complicated over here. The way it's written over here. Okay. So when it says that you have, I'll just read it first. Or if it was ripped, one of them was ripped, and it does not have the 8 centimeters. When they say 8 centimeters, we mean between both sides of it. That's what it means. It means between the 2 of them. So it's 4 centimeters on each side. Even though the other 3 are complete, nevertheless, it is possible. And therefore, if one of them if one string was torn, even if it was torn all the way up to the knot, It's still kosher because one string is only really a half a string, right? And there's the other half of it has kidei aniva. So when it says that you need enough for a loop, it means between both sides of it. So if you were careful and you know for sure that saying if only one of them was torn, even if it was torn all the way to the knot, but you know for sure that one of the other 7 strings are the other half of this, and that you have at least 4 centimeters or 8, even 8 centimeters, right? So if between 2 of them you don't have Kedei Niva, like you said, right? If 2 of them are ripped, at least one of them has to have Kedei Niva. In the case the second one is the other half of the verse, you have it between the 2 of them, you have to have at least Kedei Aniva, right? So the way it's written is a little complicated because it's referring to as if you know that the same string. The point is like this: in order for any one of the 4 strings to be kosher, each one of the 4 strings has to have at least Kedei Aniva, at least 8 or 4 centimeters. It has to have at least 4 centimeters, which means that one of them could be torn all the way to the top because you'll have the other side 4 centimeters. But if 2 of them are ripped all the way to the top, then it's not kosher because maybe 2 are the same string and you don't have in that one string Kedei Aniva.
What if the string looks like this? Where
Oh, look at that. Let's look Halacha 14. Halacha 14. The strings of the tzitzis, they have to be they have to be woven, twisted from at least 2 strings. Each string is really made up of 2 strings, right? And if it's not woven anymore, then whatever goes from here is not counted. So even if you don't count this, just count it from here. But this is still enough. This is still long enough. It's still kosher. If it was like that all the way to the top, that might be problematic. Okay. We're going to skip around over here, and we're going to go to Halacha 19. If your tzitzis are puzzle and you remove them from the talis, you should not throw them because it's considered bizui mitzvah. It's not respectful. It's a discretion of mitzvah, and therefore we put them in shameless, right? Like we either some people actually use it as a bookmark, we use it you put it in the sefer, or you can bury it like we do with everything else.
Are you allowed to burn them?
We don't burn them. We bury them.
Right. But I mean, is it allowed to burn them?
I don't think you're allowed to burn them. It says that the actual garment, you don't have to bury the actual garment, but you could just you don't throw it in the garbage. You kind of let it kind of.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
I mean, I know is shamas thrown out. The question was, I know you can bury them, but can you burn them instead of burying them?
I would think not. I mean, you don't burn shamus.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
But I'm not sure. Not, yeah. Halacha 20. You came to shul on Shabbos and you're checking your talis and you see that it's not kosher, and you don't have any other talis to wear, so you can wear it like that. But however, this is only in the case where you do not know that it was possible for Shabbos. But if you did know, then you should not wear it, and you should be more careful to make sure you have the proper tzitzis, kosher tzitzis on Shabbos. Halacha 21. Whoever wears a garment which is obligated in tzitzis and he wears it without tzitzis, he was mevatel. He missed a say, and you have to be careful to look at some of the garments, different cuts of the garments, to make sure that they have proper 4 corners, or sometimes garments have 4 corners, they don't even notice it. And we're wearing garments that have four corners and not a official tzitzis, but you buy a certain type of suit or a certain type of shirt that you don't even realize that, hey, they have four corners in this cut. And therefore, you got to be careful either to round the corners or to put tzitzis on. For example, if you ever looked at a men's Shabbos suit, like a kapata that we wear, the long suit, right? There's a long split in the back, right? So similarly, that could be four corners. The four corners on the bottom, the corners in the back. So if you notice where they cut it, one of the corners are always round. For this reason, it should not have four corners. Sometimes you could buy any other type of shirt that may have some type of split. If it's more than 50%, it's obligated in tzitzis. So kind of to just be cognizant of that, to make sure you're not wearing a beged that has four corners. When it comes to like blankets and things like that, if you're wearing, some say you shouldn't be wearing a blanket because a blanket has four corners. Some say that blanket is not really something that you should wear, cover yourself with. So it's not a problem. Also, a blanket is primarily used for night and night obligated to mitzvah. But these are just the kind of things to keep in mind that any garment that you're wearing that has four corners would be obligated in tzitzis. And if it has four corners, you don't want to put tzitzis, you make sure you round the corners. So that is from the Kitzur itself. So a few things that perhaps are not mentioned in the Kitzur. So wearing the garment, wearing the tallit, wearing the tzitzis, different customs. We wear it above our shirt or under our shirt. We had here someone on Shabbos, if you noticed, that was wearing tzitzis over his shirt. That is the custom in many communities, many Hasidic communities, that they wear the entire garment above their shirts. Obviously, many Jews and most Jews wear them under their shirts. So there's really a different opinions of what it means when it says you should see the tzitzis and you'll remember all the mitzvahs. What do you see? What are you seeing? So are you seeing the garments or are you seeing the strings? Are you seeing both? Different opinions. So the ones that follow the opinion that it means seeing the garments, so they wear the garment above their shirt. The Hamanei Chabad is that we wear our garment under the shirt, but the actual strings should be untucked. So you're able to see the strings. At least see the strings when you make the bracha. But even if not, our custom is that we have our strings covered. Obviously, if someone doesn't feel comfortable with that, then they're at a place that maybe they'll be mocked, or it's okay to tuck in your tzitzis as well. But that is primarily the way to wear tzitzis is in a way where the strings are revealed, but the garment is under our shirt. However, it does say that we should not wear the Rizal says you should not wear the garment directly on your skin. You should wear it on another garment, like an undershirt or something. So another reason why we don't lechatchila use the undershirt type of tzitzis. But then again, it's directly on your skin. It's supposed to be on another garment in between the tzitzis and your skin. Again, that's a minhag. It's not halacha. That is our minhag. You find some other communities that will wear the tzitzis above their shirt but under a vest. It's not just like style, but it's also meduig. It's specifically like that. That should be above your shirt but under, not completely revealed, only partially revealed. All these things have sources in halacha, exactly the way you should wear it. When we go into a cemetery, it says there's this concept, an interesting concept called loyeg lodosh, which means not to mock, not to tease those who are poor, those who don't have, and that's referring to those buried in the cemetery, that they're poor, meaning they don't have the opportunity to do a mitzvah. So we don't do mitzvahs besides obviously like davening. We don't do mitzvahs in the cemetery. So therefore, the custom is that we walk into a cemetery, we tuck in our tzitzis. So we don't need to be walking around with it, in your face, teasing.
Lost volume.
They cover their tzitzis. They tuck in the tzitzis. Okay.
What about,
yeah.
Is there any concerns for, like I was at the time, where, let's say it's dirty and you know, should you ever allow it to be on the floor or should you give it a little more?
The tzitzis?
Yeah, respect.
So yeah, I said you should not have tzitzis on the floor.
Right, that's true.
I mean, it's not like a Torah scroll or anything, but we just out of respect. It's a garment of a mitzvah, so we try to pick it up off the floor. Yeah, I mean, you can bring it into the restroom, you can bring it into the bathroom, obviously, but it's not. But
What about when it's in the laundry, like if it's going through the laundry?
it's fine as long as it's respectful, not just thrown. We treat it with respect. It's not like It's not like a book, a sefer that we don't like put on the floor ever. But it says that when you're wearing a top tzitzis, it says, for example, you shouldn't have your tzitzis dragging on the floor. So if you have a pile of laundry and it's part of the laundry, it's fine. It's fine. Let's just not just like have it flying around on the floor. People trample it. Like you just respect. You treat it with a little extra respect. Avram, what was your questions?
Well, I think he answered them. The tzitzis, if you break off the tzitzis only 2 or 3 inches from the end, and I had learned years ago that if you can wrap it around your finger, in other words, it was long enough to be acceptable.
Yeah, that's what we said. It's called making a loop, right?
Yes, not
What
possible.
we said is, but that's only if it's 2. If it's more than 2, then you want to make sure that there's a little bit longer than that.
Right. So the question was really, how long are you allowed? It's like the ones I have on right here. Just after the last knot, you probably have a foot. You
Fine.
probably have a foot. See,
That's good. That's good. That's fine. That's fine. That's more than enough.
Right. So, but I'm saying if you break one of them off right here, you can wrap this one around here, and this one's broke right here. You can maybe wrap that around 3 or 4 times, 3 times, and then this one might just be just an inch or 2 short.
So if you want to make sure that between that, if it's more than 2 that are ripped, that the third one has at least about 12 centimeters.
Okay. How much is that? 12 centimeters?
Because well, between the 2, basically each of the strings between the 2 sides of it, you want to make sure it has 24 centimeters. So if it's the third one and it's torn, just close to the knot, then you want to make sure that the other half of it has a full 24 centimeters.
What if you can't trace it out?
That's why once you get more than 3, you want to make sure that they're a little longer than just a loop.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And how many millimeters past the loop on the third one, if it's a third one?
I'm not sure exactly the amount, but just think of it that between that and the other string, there should be 24 centimeters.
Okay.
Yeah.
If this was a Chabad,
Like on this one right here, I have it already. Where you tie to your garment, and I've had them tear out the garment. So I figured it's possible. What can you do? Are you allowed? Does it have like
You can't just sew it back
Uh-huh.
because you can't because the garment has to be complete first, and then you have to tie the tzitzis onto the garment. You can't take tzitzis that are already tied and just sew them onto the garment.
Okay.
So you have to take it apart
Mm-hmm.
and then
Repair.
retie it.
Yeah.
Retie it. Yeah.
Okay.
Or just
Okay.
buy new.
About that time, right?
Yeah.
Hopefully.
Okay, Avram.
Rabbi,
Good to see you.
good to see you.
Take care.
put
Good night.
those, hinges, I'll put the screws on the hinges as soon as I can.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Call me if you want a hand, no, Ron.
Okay. Well, Mike, the heavy door.